Super Mario Bros. Wonder has been the talk of the internet since the latest Nintendo Direct. As what may be a breath of fresh air for the 2D side-scrolling Mario games, there are a ton of details to go over. So, of course, we're pulling the old analysis machine back out to see what secrets and hidden details we can find in part 2 of our in-depth analysis. Make sure to go check out part 1 if you haven't already, as we'll be referring back to it, as well as covering plenty of details previously left out. So, with that out of the way, let's ease in with the general gameplay. So back in part 1 of our analysis, we talked extensively about the playable cast of characters and the power-ups, but there are a few details that we didn't quite touch upon back then. Firstly, the fact that the A button lets you use a stored item, and you can have one stored item per player, as we see multiple slots in the clips with multiplayer. This is pretty similar to how it was handled in the new Super Mario Bros. Games, as well as Super Mario 3D World, but it's good to see the system remain. One other detail we want to circle back to is Yoshi. We mentioned that Yoshi might be a special character, the only one of the game to have special abilities, namely being rideable and having the flutter jump. But as some of the comments pointed out, Yoshi may also be immune to taking damage. Watching this clip of 4 Yoshis and keeping a close eye on the green one, we can see that this long missile enemy definitely seems to touch him, but he doesn't even react. Sure, he jumps, but there's no denying that this enemy clearly crosses over him. So could these enemies be on a different layer entirely, and not actually hazards to avoid? Well, maybe. But this does give credit to the idea that Yoshi might actually be more of an easy mode character, similar to Toadette in New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, who could exclusively transform into Peachette, giving her a failsafe from falling into pits. Or like Nabbit, who couldn't take damage from enemies, but couldn't use power-ups. In this case, Yoshi having special abilities would make even more sense. And unlike New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, playing in 4-player wouldn't force a player to choose an easy mode character. Either all 4 players could play as a Yoshi, or they have plenty of other options from the rest of the playable cast. But if Yoshi is an easy mode character like Nabbit was, he may be unable to use power-ups like the Fire Flower, for example. Anyway, we have one last detail on the playable cast that we want to touch upon here. At the end of our previous video, we theorized that Blue Toad might be a playable character, but many have been wondering about other characters too. We made the connection to Super Mario Run, and the only character missing from that, other than some Yoshi colors, is Toadette. But in all actuality, Nintendo might have been marketing this roster for Super Mario Bros. Wonder for quite some time, with Super Nintendo World. There were 6 main characters represented at the theme park and its associated app, particularly through the power-up bands, which also act as amiibo. Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy, Toad, and Yoshi. Save for some alternate color options for some of these characters, that's everyone we know to be playable in Wonder too. So it's entirely possible that these will be our only options after all. As much as I would love to have Rosalina playable again, in the same game as Daisy at that, sadly, it may not happen. Okay, now that we've talked even more at length about the playable characters, let's touch upon a bit more of the core gameplay here. So Mario can run, as well as sprint, and even quickly change his direction. But as far as we can see, there doesn't seem to be any sort of triple jump. Some jumps do look higher than others, but this could be due to holding the button longer or having a running start. We do see that whenever characters bounce off of an enemy or an object that would bounce them higher into the air, they spread out with a little cheer in the air. Like the new Super Mario Bros. Games, Mario can also spin in the air. It's nothing substantial, like Rosalina's spin in 3D World, but it's a familiar mechanic from the previous series of 2D Mario games. We can also see that the ground pound is back too, and though we mentioned before that players seemingly can't interfere with each other, Luigi does ground pound near Toad, almost like he was targeting him. Could this do something? Anyway, we can tell from the gameplay that the swim button still seems to be mapped to the jump button, which makes sense. We do see a brand new mechanic in this trailer though, in the form of these dash panels. Standing on them, they'll move players forward, but Mario can also jump up and hold onto the platform as well. Given that he's able to drop down from it, it likely involves holding the jump button when near the platform, and letting go of the button will drop Mario. There were also some pretty big changes to the level gameplay this time around. Levels no longer have a timer or score counter, so with no time limit to complete each level, the general design to a level could be changed up, and you likely won't lose a life for taking too long to complete it. And with the removal of points, Every action essentially serves a different purpose entirely now, rather than everything raising your score in the corner. Defeating enemies, for example, no longer rewards points, but now gives feedback based on a combo counter. A combo seems to go up to 7, displaying good, great, super, fantastic, excellent, incredible, and ending with, of course, wonderful. Very fitting for this game too. And getting to the top of the flagpole also rewards players with the wonderful. But just what do these ratings do exactly? Finally, let's talk about this crown icon that appears during gameplay. It's only seen in multiplayer, and only above one player, so it likely indicates which player is in the lead, similar to the crown in Super Mario 3D World. But if points are gone, how is a leading player even determined? Perhaps whoever obtained the highest combo? Or the most number of wonderful ratings? It's also not a physical crown like it was in 3D World, meaning it seemingly can't be stolen by other players. Back in our previous analysis, we touched upon some key details found on the world map, namely the UI and the levels we can see on the map. But now let's take a closer look at its overall structure. This area with Luigi, which we previously theorized may be World 1, seems to be made up of just 3 levels. So the structure of each world may greatly vary, with some having many more levels than others. Beyond the levels though, we can see these diamond stops on the path. One off to the left that is seemingly the starting point of the world, and one up ahead just after the 3rd level. Is this just a stop? Or does it indicate some sort of cutscene or event? Up ahead, we can see some sort of flower pattern at the end of the path, but another clip shows us what happens here. Mario and company grab onto some flowers, and based on the direction of the wind here, glide off to a new section of the map. So essentially, this might be how players travel between each world, similar to the clear pipes in the world map of 3D World. Looking ahead to seemingly their destination, it appears to be a more rugged, mountainous area. We can see a closed tulip-looking house, which we also see at the end of levels, so we'll come back to those. But seeing it here on the world map, perhaps it serves a similar function to the Toad House item shops in other games. Though, taking a closer look, it does have a blue ring around it at the bottom, the same as we see on completed levels. We can also see that the path ahead is lit up. There's also what might be yet another world even further in the background. There are more clouds, and what look like some tall trees. To the right, we can see a bright yellow question block, with a large orange flower behind it, seemingly part of a level. In fact, we can just barely make out the red ring of this unfinished level. Anyway, another clip gives us a closer look at this potential World 2. This one with Bowser's Castle flying overhead. First focusing on the world itself, we can see where Mario and company arrive via the flowers on the left here. The path ahead is pretty linear from what we can see. We know one of those flower houses is here obscured by the castle, and we can see another diamond stop off to the right, but the path to it is darkened. So could the flower bud house actually be part of a level that, at this time, hasn't been completed yet? Okay, now let's talk about this Bowser Castle flying around here. It is much more green than usual, with even the spikes, horns, and teeth all a bright glowing green. Even the purple smoke all over has a green glowing outline to it, and the eyes on Bowser's head have a hypnotic effect to them. So clearly, something different has happened to Bowser. And why does this animation even play here? Is it a cutscene at the start of the world? Well, given that the path only seems to be lit up to what may be the first level of the area, it does give credit to the idea that this scene plays at the very start of a world, or at least when a new world opens up. We'll talk more about Bowser later, but before we move on to the next scene in the world map, there's one more detail worth noting here. Where's the rest of the path after this diamond stop? We should be able to see even a hint of it, but there isn't. Even as Bowser's Castle flies off to the right, the camera pans further, and it just seems to be open. Well, the last look at the world map may tell us exactly why. This map isn't just following a linear set path. You can explore it openly. We see several levels and points of interest, none of which are connected to a marked path. While Mario and Toad are moving along in one direction, it seems pretty clear that they can go wherever they like in this section, sort of like the world map in 3D World. Though there are designated paths off to the right, one down here on the left, and in the upper left as well, each with a diamond spot at the end of a path. So maybe the diamond spot marks the endpoints of a path, and when Mario touches it, he'll follow it linearly? Well, the second one we see in World 1 still has a path both before and after it though, so it's probably something else. Anyway, this world is clearly later into the game. set on some pink clouds up in the sky. There's an unfinished level down here on the right, as well as 2 up top in the left, at least going off of the red rings. And this one in particular looks like some sort of fortress, or at least a more important level. We can see a pair of stone towers with flags on top, and the path ahead to the left isn't lit up, so this level will be required to progress ahead, while these other ones seemingly won't. There are also 2 blue rings, seemingly around levels. The first one down below features a sign for a light blue wonder seed, but the level seems to have been completed already, so it's not some sort of locked level with the seed requirement. We can't see much of the level up top, however. There's also this NPC in the middle, facing away from Mario. It's the same toad-like person seen at the end of a level, so we'll come back to them later. On the very far right, where Mario and Toad seemingly came from, we can see where the path was previously more linear. There's also some sort of red ringed structure on the very far right, but we can't make out much of it. We can see a shadow cast on the ground, and it looks like it may be another one of these flower bud houses, but it's hard to say for certain. My question though is, if it's a red ringed level, why is the path on both sides of it clear? Below the clouds appear to be a snowy world, likely the world just before this one. We can also see a flock of 4 yellow birds, with red heads. We're not really sure if they're enemies found in levels, or just part of a background detail, though they seem to be a bit too prominent, especially near the path here, to just be part of the background. There's one other element to this world map that we haven't discussed yet, and that's the look of these levels. The levels are all themed based on not only the world they're in, but also the surrounding look of the area and the map. That's not particularly surprising, but we can see the actual levels displayed on the map are also dependent on the theme. Let's take a look at these 3 levels in World 1. One of them is in a forest, while the other 2 are in the plains or grasslands. And the 2 in the grasslands actually share the same model. We can see the same striped hills, trio of clouds, and a pair of white warp pipes. And the same can be seen in the Sky World, with all 3 unfinished levels. 2 of them feature these towering mountains over the clouds, indicating what's likely a sky-based level. They all have this red warp pipe on some clouds along the bottom, with some other floating platforms along the mountains. Though this one up here also has the red warp pipe, but the look of the clouds seem to paint a different design for the level. We don't see the blue mountains, but maybe they're just off screen. Regardless, this means we should be able to tell the theme of a level before even approaching to see its preview image. Grasslands have these striped rolling hills, forests have these trees and grassy mountains, and the sky levels have these mountains piercing the clouds. There are still plenty of details to go over surrounding the levels themselves. So much so that we'll be making that the focus of part 3 of our in-depth analysis of Super Mario Bros. Wonder. So thank you all so much for watching part 2 of our analysis. I think we have a pretty strong understanding of the general gameplay and world structure now. If you want more on the playable characters, power-ups, and brand new Wonder Flower, make sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already. But don't worry, we'll soon be back with part 3, where we'll be breaking down each individual level we see, go over all the enemies and NPCs, and take an in-depth look at the brand new art style and its hand-drawn inspirations. But with that, thank you all so much for watching part 2 of this analysis. What do you think of our findings? Did we miss something that you think needs to be pointed out? Let us know down below, and stay tuned to GameXplain for plenty more on Super Mario Bros. Wonder, including part 3 of this analysis very soon. Until next time, farewell.